everybody. Welcome back to our home libraries. For today's episode, we are going to be discussing A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, better known as ACOTAR.
ACOTAR.
ACOTAR?
ACOTAR. Yeah, ACOTAR.
I don't have TikTok.
Gotta use abbreviations. We don't have time to say A Court of Thorns and Roses. ACOTAR.
And anyway, we're super excited. This one is so good. We'll get to our ratings in a little bit, but just know that we love it. And we're going to be ruining this for you if it hasn't already been ruined for you already, because it's all over social media.
Literally.
It seems like everyone's obsessed with it for good reason. But, you know, this is how it goes. So if you don't want to listen yet because you're going to go read it because now you're excited because of how excited I am and Carrie is, go read it, then come back. Check out any of our previous podcasts. Check out our content on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Carrie has some really funny reels that have been coming out that make me laugh. So just check us out, interact with us. But anyway, we're really excited for this one. So I'm going to let Carrie do the summary.
I want to say really quick before we get into the summary, even if you are a person who is going to listen to our spoilery questions and discussion, you should still read this book, because that's what got me to want to read this book, is that I watched a video that was super spoiler filled about the first book in this series, and I was like, oh shit, maybe I want to read this. Because I had it in my head that I was just not going to read Sarah J. Maas because she's so hyped on social media, and I don't usually like overly hyped authors.
She's so worth it.
Oh, 100%. 150 million%. She's worth it. Anyway, into the summary. Feyre is a 19-year-old human who is thrust into the fairy world when she kills a wolf that is actually a fae in disguise. Okay. This wolf was sent in disguise by the High Lord of the Spring Court. His name is Tamlin. More on him later. And she kills this wolf. And because of this, Tamlin now comes into the human realm, knocks down her door, and is like, hey, you killed my friend, you're coming with me. Because apparently there's this treaty between the Fae and the mortals that prevents them from, like, killing each other. And there's this quote-unquote provision in the treaty that says that if a mortal kills a Fae, it's like a life-for-a-life situation, which, questionable. Anyway, now Feyre has to go and live in Prythian for the rest of her life because she has to fulfill this life debt. And of course, feelings start to get involved, but something is wrong in fairylands. There's something very evil, very ancient. They call it a blight. And that something could then seep into the mortal world and destroy everything and everyone that Feyre loves. Okay. Apparently, this one little 19-year-old mortal girl is the only one who can stop this ancient evil. So, yeah, I need to know your rating, Kayla, because we have not talked about ratings.
I gave it a 5 out of 5 because that's what we rate these out of. I would give it 1,000,000 out of 5.
Wow, strong.
I have not been this excited about a book in a really long time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I finally got you to pick this up.
I wanted to read it. I just honestly I did not have time.
Books. They get to be kind of chunky.
And I think that I knew that if I read the first one, I would need to then read the rest. And I was like, oh, we have, kind of a set schedule that we have crafted for ourselves for this year that now has gone down the drain.
Bye-bye.
Which is fine. And I'm glad that we adapted because, oh my gosh, I love this. I love this world. I love world building. And, like, even if you're someone out there who doesn't really like fantasy, I still think that you would like this book. I do. It's so good. It is so good.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5. But that's just because I know where the story is going. So Kayla's going to be like, I would give this 1,000,000 out of 5. And then when she gets to the next one, I'm going to give this 1,000,000,000. And then she'll get to the third, I'll give this 1,000,000,000,000.
You know what, though?
And I have to keep increasing this.
That's fine. But also I want to asterisk this right here, mark it, that I am giving it this high of a rating because I have started the second one, and I think I'm rating the series. I haven't read it all yet, but I hope that I don't get
Like
disappointed
you are
on the ride.
predicting that the whole thing is just going to be
Is going to be
perfection.
a smash. Yes.
Yeah, hit out of
Absolutely.
the park. Good job, Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah. Yep.
And also, thank you to Bradley. I don't know if he's listening, my fiance Bradley. When Kayla and I were having the conversation about like not wanting to not read these books, like not wanting to have to put it down to read something else, Bradley was like, just put it in the podcast. Like, just do it. And we were like, you know what? Yeah, let's just do it. So thanks, Bradley, for encouraging that.
I feel like sometimes you just need like another, like someone who's being rational that's not as close to it, because we spent so long like carving out our schedule and stuff.
For sure.
We just needed someone with a little voice of reason, like, yeah, but you like them, so why wouldn't you talk about it in your podcast?
He was like, just
duh.
move the book to another time. Like, just read this. You're fine.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing. Thanks, Bradley, and thanks, Sarah J. Maas. Thanks, Carrie. And I'm going to thank myself for crushing through the first book.
Yeah, you did read it very fast. And I will say that these books are like 500 to 700 pages.
They're long.
But they do read pretty quickly. Like, once you get into the action, it goes by like that.
Yeah. It's just good. It's just really good.
It's a little intimidating to think about, like, oh my God, 700 pages. I gotta read this. But, I mean, it really is. Like, the story flows the whole time. Yeah. So the questions we're discussing in today's episode come from one of my personal favorite blogs for discussion questions. It's called Just Leafing. We've used questions from this blog before. We've linked that in the description as usual. But ACOTAR is apparently loosely based on a fairy tale, The Beauty and the Beast. Okay. I guess because Tamlin can shapeshift, and when we first meet him, he is in a beast form. And Feyre is a mortal who has to break a curse, so I guess, I mean, I get it, but also I don't get it. Do you think that your familiarity with Beauty and the Beast helped you get into this story at all? Like, did you see where it tied in?
When I read this question, I was kind of like, oh, I guess I see that now. That wasn't my thought when I read it, like, oh, this is like Beauty and the Beast. I didn't think that. But once someone has pointed that out, I can see where you might think that there's some similarities. Like we said, we meet Tamlin and he is in a beast form. Feyre is brought to his kingdom where she has to live. The fairies there, all in his kingdom, have masks stuck to their faces. It's part of the blight. They can't remove it. For whatever reason, the magic is malfunctioning. So a little reminiscent of all of the characters in Beauty and the Beast in a different form where you can't really see what they look like. So a little bit there, but I don't think that they're the same. I think that this story feels very unique. And I already said it, this is the first time I felt very, very excited about a book in a long time. Like, I've enjoyed a lot of the books we've been reading lately, but this one was like, I can like feel it right now. Like, I'm glad we're sitting here talking about this, but I want to go read the second book. Like,
I
it's
know.
staring
I've been trying
at me.
so hard. I've been trying so hard not to pick up the third one because I'm waiting for you to try to catch up a little bit. Because I know that, you know, I'm on spring break right now, so I will just like finish
it's not
it in
even
a day
fair.
because I just have time. But yeah, back to this question. I felt the same way. I didn't really see the Beauty and the Beast thing the first time I read it, but I kept it in mind with my reread because this is my second time reading the series. And I don't really think that the bits that people think are like Beauty and the Beast are actually very important to the plot. Like, the idea of a young woman having to break a curse isn't exactly a new idea. It's been used in many, many books. It's not, I mean, it doesn't originate in Beauty and the Beast.
In Beauty and the Beast. Yeah.
So I get it. But at the same time, like, meh. Like, is it? Maybe. And I mean, some people even go as far to say it's like a retelling, which I don't even really see at all.
I don't see that. I think it's uniquely itself. Like, there's not one single like super original idea out there. Like, if you really break stuff down.
Yeah. Philosophically, you know.
Yeah, but like, I think that this world that was built up by Sarah J. Maas is awesome. I get real excited when there's a map at the front of a book, and this has a map. I
Do our
love it.
YouTube watchers need to see the map if you haven't already?
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me see.
It's just so good.
Hold on. Almost there.
I love it.
Here's the map.
There you go. Yeah, so Feyre is mortal. It's essentially an island they live on, but only a small part is where the mortals live. There's this magical barrier wall put up that separates where the Fae live and where the mortals live. So all the mortals hate the fairies, and they believe that the fairies hate them as well. This has been like, is it 500 years or so that this wall was erected?
Yeah, 500.
To protect this treaty's in place. A great war, yeah. So we are first introduced to Feyre, and her family is living this abysmal life. It's the middle of winter. They have no food left. She's the only member of her family that seems capable. They used to be this well-to-do family, and they lost their fortune, and her dad now can't walk while his knee is messed up. And she has two sisters, and they don't seem to help. So Feyre is tasked with hunting to protect and feed her family. She feels that this is her role in life because she had promised her mother before her mother passed away that she would look after everyone. So she takes this upon herself. What did we think of this whole family dynamic?
Yeah, it was weird. It just felt like, I mean, we'll start with Nesta. I didn't really like Nesta initially.
No.
It seemed like she was she was either in severe denial or she just did not care enough. Like, she was really taking advantage of the fact that Feyre has this ability to hunt and can bring them food and can sell pelts and get them even the tiniest bit of money. And then as soon as Feyre gets money, Nesta is like, well, I'm going to buy some new boots, or I'm going to buy a new coat, or, very taking advantage of Feyre for sure. But I didn't hate Elaine.
I didn't either.
Like Elaine was more ignorant than she was defiant in any way.
Yeah. And her dad was just a disappointment. I know his knee was messed up and he couldn't, but it's kind of like, you still have 3 daughters that you need to like figure out somehow to like help your family, and he just felt pathetic.
I mean, I do have a little bit of empathy for him. I mean, his wife died, he lost his fortune, and now he has these 3 girls that constantly remind him of his wife, and his knee is all messed up, and he can barely walk, and how's he gonna work? And like, I get it. Maybe he has a little bit of a depression. He needs something to like kick him into gear. You know what I mean? But that's like the only little shred of empathy I have for these 3 family members. I mean, Nesta's kind of a bitch.
Yeah, I guess, but you know what though? I kind of realized, so my first impression of Nesta was like, gosh, she's terrible. Then when Feyre, so she was in the land of the Fae, and then Tamlin sends her away, so she goes back to her family. I started to have some more empathy for Nesta after that point. So we realized Tamlin had like glamored her family, so they just thought that she was safe and helping an ailing aunt, and gave the family back money. They were comfortable, they were fed, their life was markedly improved from what it was. Turns out that Nesta, because she's like a major bee, the glamour didn't work on her. She's like so strong-willed that it didn't work. So she knew that Feyre was taken, and she even tried to like go to find Feyre, but got turned back around because of the magic. And so I started to have more empathy for her there, because I'm starting to realize that maybe we didn't... Yes, I think she should have helped out Feyre more at the beginning. Like, I don't think anything excuses that, but I feel like who she is a very strong person, and I think that she's going to come back into play in future books.
Oh, she will.
Yeah. And I'm hoping it's for a good reason, because she really hates the fairies, so I'm undecided on what it will be, but I think that she has the strength and the power to be important, just like Feyre has been. Because we see Feyre, like nothing stops her. It's actually like incredible. Like even when stuff does stop her, she finds a way. That's like she didn't know how to hunt. She figured it out for her family. So I feel like some of
Yeah.
that is similar in Nesta, and I'm hopeful. You can't say
The
anything because
one
you've read
thing,
more.
the one thing I will say about Nesta is that her will, the strength of her will, does come into play again. But like I don't care about spoiling things for our listeners or if you're watching, but I am going to try to protect my friend Kayla here, her knowledge of what's happening, and try not to spoil anything for her, because at the time that we're recording this, she is still kind of in the middle of book 2, and I don't want to reveal anything that is important to the plot. But Nesta's strong will is definitely like a defining characteristic of her character, and it does become a really big deal at the end of book 2. You'll get
Well,
there.
so then what I thought is gonna happen is just how does it play out? Unknown yet to me. Carrie knows. So we will
Yeah.
see more from Feyre's family in future books.
Yeah. But despite this like necessity that Feyre has to care for her family, this vow that she made for her mother, and despite the fact that Tamlin has said, I glamored them. They don't know that I took you, and they're taken care of. They have food. They have money. Despite that, she still is trying to escape Prithian. She wants to go back to the mortal world. Why do you think she's trying so hard to get
Well,
back
I
to her
think
family?
we kind of talked about this in a different book when we talked about lore, but it's this generational idea of being like conditioned into something. So it's been 500 years of this divide and this huge war between mortals and fairies had actually enslaved mortals in some of these courts and stuff. So there's just this deep-seated mistrust and almost hatred amongst these
Yeah, for sure.
kinds. So that's why she wants to go back. She doesn't know that who she can really trust. Is she actually safe? Like she's uncomfortable and not at her home. So yeah, that it doesn't shock me that she would still be trying to get back, even though the life that she left was terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, she kind of could have a cushy life living in Prithian. I mean, Tamlin would essentially give her whatever she needs.
Yeah.
Um, the hatred, though, I want to go back to that. That's a very important part of this
Mm-hmm.
story, because when she kills the wolf, she doesn't really know for sure that this wolf is Fae, but this wolf is big. Like, it's bigger
Yeah.
than any wolf she'd ever seen before. And it had like golden eyes or something. And just looked at her very intelligently. She initially shot it with an ash arrow, and ash is apparently the only thing that can actually harm a Fae, ash wood. And he just looked at her. This wolf just looked at her and watched her draw the bow again and shoot again and kill him.
Yeah.
And the fact that she did that with hatred in her heart is a big reason that she then gets brought into this much bigger conflict at play in Prithian.
Yeah, and I feel like this is what really draws the story along is that there's a lot of stuff that gets revealed eventually, but there's the curse or like the magic, what is at play, prevents people from telling Feyre
Yeah.
certain things. So at first you're like, are they just really that misleading? Like what are they doing? Do we actually trust them? But it's part of this like curse, if you want to call it that,
They
or the
physically cannot use words that will tell her what is happening.
yes.
Yeah.
So Feyre has to like unravel a lot of this on her own, and it pulls you along too because you're like, what is going on? Like I want to know what is happening. Why can't they take the masks off? What can she do? Like she's important, but you don't quite know why, and
Yeah. And
it's
when they don't
awesome.
know that she's listening, like when she's overhearing conversation, there's this mysterious her that keeps being brought into the conversation.
Yeah.
But this mysterious her is not mentioned when they know she's there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they do know she's there. They're Fae. They have good hearing.
Well, and
Like
that's
they can tell she's walking down the hallway, but you know, we get towards the end and they're like intentionally letting her overhear certain
right,
conversations
because
to
it's kind
help
of their
her put it together.
workaround. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So another big part of this is Feyre's feelings for
Mm-hmm.
Tamlin. I mean, technically, he's like imprisoning her.
Yeah.
She's a prisoner in his court, and somehow she starts to have this attraction for him. And I mean, what do you think? What do you think about Tamlin? What do you think about the fact that Feyre now has feelings for him? I mean, what really led to going from jailer to, oh my god, I love you, you know?
Yeah,
Though
I
there
do
was no
feel
like, I
like
love you. Don't worry about
no,
it.
and I do feel because it's not like it happens right away, but it does happen kind of quickly. I think though for Feyre is that she was so alone, so on her own. It was her protecting everyone that she finally had someone that was trying to look out for her. We see continual moments of Tamlin just being nice and being good and trying to give her
Yeah.
good things that she does start to like slowly trust him and see the good in him, and not just what he does for her but for what he does for those around him, how he tries to protect her court. You know, he is very protective. He wants everyone in his court to be safe, including Feyre. And I think that that's what started making her like have these feelings towards him.
Yeah. This kind of brings me back to a quote from the second book, which I don't think is a spoiler. I think you've read it. But she she and she and Rhysand have this thing where they each have to say a truth, like it's a truth for a truth kind of thing. And so he goes on this whole spiel about how he's feeling, and then she has to give him a truth in return. And she said, I'm thinking that I was a lonely, helpless person, and I might have fallen in love with the first thing that showed me a hint of kindness and safety. And I'm
Mm.
thinking maybe he knew that, maybe not actively, but maybe he wanted to be that person for someone. And
Yeah.
that kind of brings in a little confliction about her feelings for Tamlin. But that's not till the second book. Ignore
No, but also
that.
though too, I think that that's kind of yes, we realize that in the second book, but I feel like you start feeling that in this first book that like
Mm-hmm.
they do genuinely like each other, but I think it's also born out of what they both needed at that
Yeah.
time. So there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, is
Mm-hmm.
that going to be a lasting relationship? They go through some trials and tribulations when they're under the mountain that I don't think Tamlin handled well at all. So,
No.
yeah. And that's in
We'll
this
get to
book. This
that in
is
a
in
second
book
for sure.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, Tamlin, he also starts to develop some pretty strong feelings for Feyre, and there is a
Yeah.
point that he tells Feyre that he loves her. Then she realizes that she loves him, but
She doesn't say it.
doesn't actually like tell him that, and he decides that to protect her. This is where Rhysand comes in. Okay, Rhysand is like very much portrayed as a bad guy in this
Mm-hmm.
book.
That
And he
Tamlin and his court
eventually,
do not trust Raysan.
no,
They
no,
do not
not at
trust him at
all.
all. When Raysan
Not even
enters
a sliver.
into their court, you feel the tension. You know that they are on
Mm-hmm.
edge and they think that he is going to hurt them and Feyre.
Mm-hmm. Or use hurting Feyre to hurt Tamlin. That
Tamlin.
kind of situation,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Like a very vindictive person, very um, not what he is. Anyway, so Tamlin tries to protect Feyre. He's like, I'm just going to send you back to the Mortal Lands because I don't want Rhysand to use you against me. I don't want this
Her.
light to take you from me or anything like that. He can't say, I don't want her to take you because he can't say that to Feyre. Physically cannot say it. It's part of the curse. So he sends her back to the Mortal Lands. And the question being, like, this is supposed to be a plot device. She sends Feyre back. Feyre realizes she loves him, but at this point, it's kind of too late. Like failure is already in the air. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Feyre first fails to solve this curse, to lift it, and then chooses to go after Tamlin.
Yeah.
What do you think was the point of this? Send her back just so she can come back and try to save us anyway.
Yeah. I think the point for Feyre is that it's not too late, right? Like yes, she didn't solve it when she could have, or she didn't help them when she could have, but she's still trying to help them. And I think for the big picture, that shows that the relationship between fairies and mortals is not totally dead. Like, they can have a good relationship between the two kinds. I think that that's kind of like a big picture idea, that this Feyre going to persevere is important for the story. The whole thing of like failing and keep going, that's what her life has been. It's kind of who she is.
That's very much her.
So this isn't going to stop her. So
yeah. And this is also where we get the first kind of like hopeful glimmer that Nesta is a decent person, because when she goes back to the Mortal Lands is when we find out that this glamour did not work on Nesta at all. Nesta was like, I tried to go after you, but I could not get through the barrier, the wall. Okay. And Feyre decides that she's going to go back because she loves this man for some reason. And Nesta encourages her, is like, we don't need you here. You need to go after what's going to make you happy, basically. And if he is your happiness, we're good here. Go do it. So Feyre goes back to Prythian, back to the Spring Court. At this point, it has been destroyed. And the only person she finds is Alice, who is kind of like acts as her handmaiden throughout her time at the Spring Court, helps her dress, does her hair, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And Alice is finally able to tell her about this blight and this mysterious her, whose name is Amarantha. They come up with the wildest names in fantasy books. That's
they do.
Feyre, Tamlin, Amarantha. What is this? And so essentially this curse is that Amarantha wants Tamlin to be her, I don't know, lover, consort, whatever we want to call it. She wants a relationship of some sort.
With Tamlin.
Probably a sexual nature with Tamlin. Tamlin is like, hell nah. You were on the wrong side of that war 500 years ago, so that's a no for me, dog. And Amarantha is like, okay, I'm gonna curse you then. If you won't be with me, you have to find a mortal girl who has such hatred in her heart for Fae that she would kill them. And you have to make that girl fall in love with you, and you have 50 years to do it. 49 years, technically. 7 times 7 years is what they say. And that's the gist. Feyre obviously failed that. She did not tell Tamlin that she loved him. Yeah. Because as soon as the 49 years were up is when they came and ransacked his court and they took him.
Yeah.
Took pretty much everybody except Alice, and now they're all under the mountain, which is a place, not like, oh, I'm gonna go under the mountain, but like capital under.
Yeah. So this is where Amarantha created her court. So she now has all these people under there from all of the other courts. Are now under her control. She's taken power from all of the High Lords. So she's taken a big chunk of Tamlin's power and a big chunk of the other High Lords. And we had already met him, but Rhysand is a High Lord of the Night Court. But he's this mixed bag. We don't really understand him because he's referred to as Amarantha's whore. So he is with her, he does her bidding, and we don't know to trust him. We don't know who to trust under the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, Feyre is caught. She's trying to go under the mountain, and they catch her. The adder catches her, which is apparently this like weird creature that's like a skeleton with wings and is also super evil. And the adder brings her to Amarantha, and of course Amarantha's evil, so she's like, what can I do to make these people suffer? So she tells Feyre that she has to complete. They make a bargain, is what they say. And everybody knows, even if you have never read a book about fairies, you do not make deals with fairies because it's always in their favor. It's never in the human favor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so she makes a bargain, Amarantha and Feyre. Feyre has to complete 3 trials in order to win Tamlin's freedom. There were 3 of these trials.
Or solve a riddle, and everyone will be free.
Solve a riddle. Immediately
Immediately.
is the condition with the riddle, but there was no such condition with
for the trials.
This is important. So there were 3 trials. We can talk about each of them, but which of them do you think was the most intense?
The last trial.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do. So the first trial is that Feyre is hunted by this massive worm with all these razor sharp teeth, and Feyre ends up having to she kills the worm so it doesn't eat her. That is very intense. That whole scene is intense. The second trial, the reason why I didn't feel like it was as intense is because I just didn't quite get it. Like, there were these gates with hot whatever dropping down on them, and Feyre just had to pick which of the 3 levers. The problem is Feyre can't read. So I don't...
Yeah, it was a riddle.
Yeah.
She had to solve the riddle by picking a lever, but she
couldn't read. Yeah, so that one just didn't feel as intense to me, even though, I know it was. And then the last trial was that Feyre had to kill 3 fae that were brought in front of her, and they, took a mask off one at a time. They're all terrible, but that last one, because Feyre would not have been a hunter if it wasn't out of necessity. She does not want to hurt anybody.
For sure.
So this one really, to kill 3 would save all, but it was insane.
Yeah. I mean, all of her time there has helped her realize that not all of the fae are bad. Many of them are actually good, and that's what this whole war 500 years ago was about. It was about some of the fae trying to protect the humans from slavery, basically. So she now has this appreciation for the fae world and the people who are good from the fae.
But pretty much all of them would have been hard for me. I wouldn't have survived any of them.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was looking for the riddle so that we could read it for everyone who doesn't know. So here's the riddle. It's freaking easy, so why Feyre did not...
Wait, I didn't know it.
It's
I'm terrible at riddles. No.
We'll give you the answer later, okay? But here's the riddle so you guys can think on it for a few minutes. Okay. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but we never meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned, I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. That was the
riddle. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So
back to the question. The worm was crazy.
Yeah.
The worm, freaking crazy. But it was also kind of in her wheelhouse of skills.
Right.
She is a hunter, so she kind of figured out how to beat him, right? I think personally, the hardest one for me would have been the last one.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to kill 3 innocents.
No, absolutely not. So was it after her second... After the worm, she had broken her arm?
It was after the worm, yeah. At some point, she got a piece of bone, lodged in her arm, and it was getting super infected. Yeah. She was going to,
She was dying. She was, yeah. So she was hoping that we had met a character earlier on, Lucian, kind of like a hand to the court, the spring court. He's one of Tamlin's, most trusted advisors.
He's an emissary, I think is his title.
And he had previously helped Feyre when her nose was broken, early on when she got brought under the mountain. She was hoping that he was going to come back to help her at some point because she knew she was dying. She had no magic. Well, he does not walk into the cell, but Rhysand
Guess who does?
Yes.
My man Rhys.
And he strikes another bargain with Feyre. Mm-hmm. He will heal her if she will spend, I think he starts off out at 2 weeks a month.
It was 2 weeks, yep.
every
That's what
month
started.
at
It turned
his
into this
night
little
court.
bargaining thing.
Yeah, they end up
2 weeks, and then she said 5 days, and then he said 10 days, and then she said 1 week, and that was the agreement.
So he heals her arm, but then this bond happens. So she gets this tattoo all down her arm with an eye on her palm. And it's somehow now that they're connected through this bond. This bargain now has linked them together.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, at this point, what are we feeling about Reese? Good, bad. We don't know. Because of TikTok and because of Carrie.
I'm freaking biased.
Yeah, and I already...
You have to ignore my incessant fawning over Reese to answer this question.
I know, and I had that in the back of my mind because I knew that you loved him because we did our end of the year wrap up last year and you were gushing about him. So I was like, I know that I'm gonna like him, but at this point you're like, you don't know. You don't know. You don't feel that he is loyal to Amarantha. You can start to tell that he's doing things to try to protect himself. Yes. But the question is he gonna actually try to protect Feyre, or is all this just for himself? You don't really understand all of his motives. But you do start to think that he's not fully
100%. He is risking himself to help her.
Yeah.
Because Amarantha is going to be like, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
You're dead. So it's not like this bargain is fully for his benefit because he's taking a big risk just to make this bargain.
Yeah.
But anything more than that, I cannot say because I'll give things away.
Yeah. And I can't either because now I've started reading the second book. But that's where we're at right now with Raysand. Mm-hmm. We're going to progress forward now.
I don't like him.
Feyre completes all the tasks. Yeah.
And Amarantha is like,
I didn't tell you when I release everyone. And then she just snaps. She destroys Feyre. Kills her. Yeah. But we're in the land of magic. And because as Feyre's about to die, she realizes the answer to the riddle. So
and the riddle's condition said that everyone would be immediately released if she could come up with the answer.
So on Feyre's dying breath, she says the answer to the riddle. If everyone had heard the riddle earlier on, we're going to give the answer now. The answer is love. Oh, love. Aww. So she says this, and then her neck is snapped, and she is in this in between. She is dead. Her body's dead, but her soul is hanging on.
She's hanging on to something. She says that there was like a golden thread,
and she was
holding on to.
And then we see her mind's eye flashes out, and she sees what's going on, and it's actually through Rhys's eyes, and you can see he is distraught. He is trying to kill Amarantha. He's trying to save her. He was doing everything he could to try to save Feyre. Tamlin is just begging
and what's Tamlin doing?
Crickets.
Sitting in the corner. Yeah. Like a little baby.
Tamlin was a big letdown during this whole scene. And Raysand is...
This is where I need to put that reel. I'm going to find a reel. I sent it to Kayla earlier today. I'm going to put it in the screen between us.
For this
You're going to see...
This is what Tamlin is doing.
This is the amount of effort that Tamlin put into saving Feyre.
So... Feyre's dead. Everyone's upset. Amarantha is then murdered because now all the fairies are free. The High Fae, right, of all the courts, instill a drop of their power.
The High Lords. Yeah, the first one to step forward, this is important. The first one to step forward is the High Lord of the Autumn Court, who is Lucian's father, and he's a super...
hateful man.
We don't like him. No. So interesting that he's the first one to come forward and offer up a little kernel of power to Feyre. And each of the High Lords has to do this in order for her to have a chance, basically. And they do, and she's able to follow that little golden thread back to her own body. but now she is transformed. Now she is Fae herself, because she now has power from each of the High Lords of Prythian. How did this little twist make you feel?
Yeah, it did feel like a twist for me, just because I didn't think that they were going to let her die, but I didn't think she was going to come back as a fairy, and I didn't think that these fairies who had their power stripped away down to just a little bit would be willing to then even give up a drop once they got it back.
To give it up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was shocked by that, and I think that that's what we're going to see play out, is that now, yes, she has more love in her heart for fairies, but she's mortal, grew up not liking fairies. I think the repercussions of this and the trials are what we're going to see play out in the next book.
Yeah, 100%. So, at the end of this book, okay, do you feel that this ending is happy? I mean, we have like one more little scene with Rhysand. They're out on a balcony. Okay, I can read that bit as well because I tabbed it. Because I obsessively tabbed this book. And she's basically asking him, like, why, after her death, why did he go after Amarantha? Because, like, Amarantha's still there. He could have died. Like, what was the point? And he basically said that when the legends get written, I don't want to be remembered for standing on the sidelines. I want my offspring to know that I was there and that I fought against her, even if it wasn't useful. And he also says, I didn't want you to fight alone or die alone.
And this mirrors...
He was ready to die himself, is
for
what he's saying.
And this mirrors this... There was a small... Not small, it was significant, but earlier on, Feyre was with a fairy as the fairy was dying. She held his hand and kept saying, like, reassuring things. And we see this now mirrored with how Rhysand, he didn't want her to be alone in her final moments. So there's... You feel like a little bit of a shift right there when you read that. You're like, okay, there's some maybe common threads maybe between them. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was a fairy that Amarantha had actually ripped its wings off and basically dropped it at the doorstep of the spring court. Yeah. And Tamlin asked why she'd sat there and held this fairy's hand as it was dying, and she basically said, because I would want someone to hold my hand until the end and even after. I'm pretty sure those are close to her exact words. Yeah. So interesting that Rhysand would then be like, I didn't want you to die alone.
And that we don't see Tamlin.
Yeah. Fuck Tamlin.
So, you can't answer this because we already know where you stand, and I answered this right after I finished the book before I started book 2. So,
okay, good.
At the end of book 1, are we team Rhysand or team Tamlin? I said that you're team Tamlin. Like, everything Feyre did was to get back to Tamlin.
She's done so much. You want her to have a good ending, yeah.
But it doesn't feel as nice as it used to. Tamlin was a letdown. I said, like, I don't think that this is exactly what I wrote, and this was before I started reading the second book. I don't think Tamlin is going to be enough for Feyre. You saw him not give her enough when she was giving everything.
Yeah, literally, like, she died for this man.
Yeah.
And he was just in a corner, like, poor me.
And it's just, and I think I said it earlier, but I just think that they were together when they needed each other, and I think that you can start to see that it's not the same, nor will it ever be, because of what they went through under the mountain. They both now are different people. So we will see what happens in book 2.
I do want to read kind of like the last little bit that gets us into book 2, our last little glimpse of Rhysand, because it's going to become important, and I think Kayla has already guessed what it means. It says, he said, well, goodbye for now, rolling his neck as if we hadn't been talking about anything important at all. He bowed at the waist, his wings vanishing entirely, because he has wings, and had begun to fade into the nearest shadow when he went rigid. His eyes locked on mine, wide and wild, and his nostrils flared. Shock, Pure shock flashed across his features at whatever he saw on my face, and he stumbled back a step. Actually stumbled. The end. Goodbye. That's where we leave that book there. So when you answered these questions, were you interested in reading the second book?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously.
No, I
You
literally...
were like 3 chapters in and you were like, Carrie, I have a problem.
So I made a mistake and I only ordered the first book. And then I was getting near the end and I thought it was going to take me a little longer than it did. So I was like, all right, I'm going to order all the rest. I know I'm going to start them. Well, my books didn't get here in time, but thankfully to the public library, I was able to get the audio book for the second one.
And I'm shocked that you were. It's such a popular series. I'm shocked that you did not have to put a 8-week hold on
Nope,
the
people forget about audiobooks, Carrie. The audiobook was available at 3 different libraries because yes, between Carrie and I, we have 3 library cards.
We do.
And it was available at all 3 locations. The book itself was not, but I'm fine with the audio, so I started with that, and it's incredible. So everyone go read these books right now. Okay, thanks.
I think at this time you're about halfway through it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I finished it last night. There are 69 chapters, which, Sarah, we see you.
Sarah gets a little
But
crazy.
the most important one is like 54, 55. That's the most important chapter. Also, the last chapter is super important. Anyway, because we cannot stop, our next episode is going to be A Court of Mist and Fury, Akamath, which is the second book of this series. So we are going to continue. We're going to see what's happening with Feyre under the mountain, or after Under the Mountain, and this picks up 3 months after the end of ACOTAR. So, yee, super interesting, super great.
Incredible.
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually get off this right now so I can go continue to read.
Oh, I want to say fair warning for those of you who are thinking about reading this, and if you're like me and you're a little bit sensitive or like cringe about sexual language in books, it gets worse as it goes. The first one is very tame. The second one, there's like a chapter or 2 that you're kind of like, third one, fifth one, like, oh my god, that's porn. Just so you're aware. You will be reading porn if you read the 5th book. You have to like wade through all the porn to get to the plot.
Wow.
I'm not joking.
I, for one, am excited
I don't know what was up with Sarah,
to continue down this journey, though, because this world is awesome. Yeah. It's a treat to read it. So, love, love, love. Go read them. And go comment up on all of this, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there.
We need to know.
Yeah.
We need to know your thoughts, and we need to know if you were as suspicious about Tamlin towards the end as we were. If you were kind of like, what the hell, Tamlin?
Let down.
Don't you love this lady?
Not enough. On that note,
but anyway,
Feyre's awesome. We're starting to like Raysan.
We just can't stop talking about this book.
Yeah. But we're going to end it right there.
We're like trying to conclude, but we keep talking.
No. That's it. I'm going to go read. Carrie's going to find something else to do because she's too far ahead of me. And we will catch all of you next time for the next installment of Sarah J. Maas and This Beautiful World. So, thank you, everyone. Yeah. And bye.
See you next time. Bye.